Sometimes the reception of applause and acclaim only proves that we can't handle it. Hi, this is Barry Phillips with 10-Minute Torah, day number 2, the Torah portion, Vayeshev. Let's continue again in chapter 37 of Genesis, or Bereshit, and read again the verse that says in verse 3, Israel loved Joseph more than all of his children because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a long robe. This reality of relationship between Yaakov and Joseph is very, very interesting. It is thought in rabbinical minds, and I can see this very easily, that all of the various traits, character expressions, all the talents necessary for Israel to become a righteous people, a righteous and fruit-bearing nation, were all rooted and originally found in one man, that is, in Israel. So if we think about everything of humanity, all these character traits and so on were originally rooted in Adam. When it comes to Israel, as the calling and the covenant progresses from Abraham to Yitzhak or Isaac, now into Yaakov, that Yaakov is the embodiment of all that Israel is to become. It was one generation to another generation until it got to Yaakov, and then with him, a nation was birthed. So, of all the 12 sons, each of them carried a certain something from their father. Then there is a continuing of this mindset that says that everything that was found in Yaakov, Israel, in microcosm, was also found in Joseph. One rabbinical writer says that Joseph, being tempted in living in Egypt, or Mitzrayim, saw his face in a mirror and saw the face of his father in his own reflection, that he looked so much like Yaakov, it was like looking at his father. And therefore, he was encouraged or inspired by his father's reflection to abstain from whatever the temptation may have been. Such should it be when we see ourselves. We should see Yeshua more than ourselves and be inspired then, I want to be more like him than being like myself. So all of this character trait and embodiment of Yaakov now being found in Joseph, that Joseph has, in a sense, become the completeness of his father. Yaakov, or Israel, recognizes this, and that's why he was prompted, again, we'll use the word inspired, or moved in such a way as to create this coat of significance and give it to Joseph. Now, we're not told necessarily that the coat was a variety of colors. That's often the way it is put. But it is that Joseph gave his son a long robe. It is a robe of significance. Let's consider something. Let's go over to the book of Yochanan, John, chapter number 19, and read 2 verses, verse 23 and 24. Then the soldiers, when they had impaled or crucified Yeshua, took his outer garments and made 4 parts, to each soldier a part, and the inner garment. But the inner garment was without seam, woven from the top in one piece. So they said to each other, let us not tear it, but cast lots for it, whose it shall be, in order that the scripture might be fulfilled, which says, they divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. The soldiers therefore did this. That phrase that they divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots, is found in Psalms 22 and verse 18, which if you read that, it is a clear picture of Yeshua on the cross or on the tree. If we look at the words then that are used pertaining to this verse, garments is the word beged, and it means one's cloak or one's covering. It has a secondary meaning that is a bit perplexing in that it means treachery or deceit. Clothes have a way of deception. People will buy certain style clothing or certain patterns on their clothing in order to disguise what they perceive as a bodily flaw. And so, the stripes run one way, it accentuates one type of body, and if it runs another way, then, well, it accentuates something else. Certain colors or promote a certain covering, if you will. And so clothes have a way of deceiving the onlooker in that they don't really recognize who we are. Clothes make the man. You can take someone who is lacking skill and lacking wisdom, lacking propriety in life, and dress them up in a fine suit of clothes and teach them to walk a certain way. No one would know that their life is really in shambles, but by the appearance, it looks like they're wealthy and well-to-do. The second word that is used here is the word labush. Labush is more specifically a splendid garment. And it also has a secondary meaning, wife. Let's kind of think about this for a moment. So in the beged, they divided the cloaking or the disguising of Yeshua. These Roman soldiers, they divided among themselves their various parts of Yeshua's presentation, and each took their own part. Kind of lends to the structure of denominations then. Well, we focus on this teaching of him and that focus of him and some other type and shadow of him, and this is where we're prominent. One, the Baptist might think, well, we're talking about his baptism, his death, burial, and resurrection, and specifically his baptism. The Pentecostals are more about he's the giver of the Spirit, the giver of the Ruach HaKodesh. So each is divided among themselves as they would. But the other garment, they didn't tear it. They didn't divide it, but they cast lots for it. This garment is also shown to us in the book of Exodus, chapter 28, where it talks about that they are to, in verse 31, make the robe of a shoulder garment all of blue, and the opening for his head shall be in the middle of it, a woven binding all around its opening, like the opening of a scaled armor, so it does not tear. Specifically, Yochanan says that it was a woven garment from top to bottom, as was traditionally understood this garment of blue that the high priest wore. What was Yeshua doing with this robe, this blue robe? It is also thought that when the Pharisees looked at him and said, "Who gave you the authority to do these things?" that among those things was to wear this tekelet blue garment among his clothes. And Yeshua refused to give them an answer for that. But here's the thought. They didn't tear the wife. They gambled for her. And the religions of the world are still gambling and casting lots for the one that can lay claim to the bride of Mashiach. But he is our high priest, and he alone has us. We only belong to him. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. To then, shalom.